How to Live Through an Executive Audit by L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology and author of the bestseller Dianetics. Section 2: Why Organizations Act Psychotic. Communication lines have some interesting properties. They have, one might say, life and powers of their own. A strong theta, reason bearing, communication line has a way of maintaining its own life and defending itself from interference. If it is tampered with, it will blow up at the point where it is interrupted, and it will blow up the person who interrupts it. Any person who will interrupt a line which is carrying smooth, reasonable, well organized theta material must be acting on a suicidal compulsion, because the people who are dependent upon this line will take strong measures to preserve and protect it, even if they never have been told anything about communications as science or art. The value of a communication line is implicit in every operation of theta. Within the individual or within the group, if a man stands across a strong communication line and blocks its flow, it will blow up in his face. If the line is not so strong, the individual may succeed in blocking it. The communicator, wishing to restore this line to operation, need only demonstrate that the line was interrupted by this individual. The individual will then blow off the line and, quite possibly, out of the organization completely. Wherever there is a person who will pervert a communication line, there is a germ of death in the organization. If the organization contains much life, it will not tolerate such an infection. If the organization contains but little life, however, a clever authoritarian may sit on the communication lines indefinitely, perverting them just enough for his purposes, but not enough to cut them completely. If this authoritarian happens to be the head man, the result will be that atmosphere of oppression, uncertainty, and rebellion so familiar to the employees and associates of that familiar figure of American business, the self made tyrant. Management, which has tasted the pleasures of creative planning, will have no further time for, nor patience with, the puny powers which can be derived from perverting communications within an organization. A good communication system permits management to be the rider of a racehorse. A poor communications system gives management only the doubtful joys of driving a stubborn mule. Communications lines are interrupted more frequently by negligence than by design. People are just too busy to follow the required communication procedures. They neglect to make the slight extra motion which is necessary for their data to be entered properly into the communication system. Or, if there is not yet such a system, they neglect even to tell anyone what they want done or what they have done. The chief communicator in any industry which is instituting a communication system will spend most of his time indoctrinating people in the procedures and reminding them to use the procedures. He will have to persuade them that it is necessary to do this, not because someone demands it, but because the organization cannot function or live without it. The communication system is designed to pick up and preserve bits of information such as the key to the back door of warehouse number 3 has disappeared, or there is an unclaimed box of roller bearings in the dispensary, or the drinking water in the women's restroom is slightly radioactive, and keep them moving until something is done about them, and then keep them on file for reference in the future. An item like the key, etc., would be shunted around by the communication system feverishly until the lock was changed and new keys issued. Of course, the communication system would not issue any orders about this. It would merely present the information to command points until an order was issued. The stream of orders which issues from any command point in a large organization is made up of many small items. These items are the minute to minute thoughts of the organization. The communication system is the vehicle for these thoughts. It is the nervous system of the group. We have often compared an organization to a life organism. We can carry this analogy further to state that an organization without a communication system is like a sponge, insensitive, immobile, and helpless. The higher forms of life have highly developed nervous systems by which all parts of the organism are in communication with each other. If an organism's nervous system is not arranged so that it can feel pain, it cannot withdraw from or cope with danger. Its survival potential is low. If it wishes to attack, it must be in immediate and dependable communication with all its members. Its ability to attack and defend, and thus its survival, are directly dependent upon communication. A communications system is not only the nervous system, but also the brain of an organization. That is, it forms the medium, the mass of tissue through which the planning mind of the organization, all those individuals who originate plans, from the greatest to the smallest, operates. A mind cannot operate without memory. Whether that mind is running an organism or an organization, it must be able to communicate with its past. Memory is absolutely essential to the operation of an organization. An organization with a bad filing system acts psychotic. The filing system, being the memory of the organization, is an integral part of the communications system, which is the brain of the organization. The two cannot be separated, or psychotic behavior will be manifested by the organization. Management cannot plan without an excellent memory operating in the organization. This memory should not have to be and indeed cannot be enclosed in the heads of one or two individuals. It has to be available to all of the computing and planning levels of the organization. It has to be accurate. The evaluation of the information in it must be exact and uncolored. The organization becomes neurotic to the degree that the information in its memory is colored. The survival of an organization depends upon its ability to perceive, to compute, and to remember. All these take place within the tissues that form the communication system. A group, like an individual, must know that it has done what it is doing and what it intends to do. A group, like an individual, must have this data available immediately at will. The more closely a communication system, including perception, memory, estimation of future efforts, and relay of orders, approximates the operation of the human mind, the better the organization will function. When the memory of the organization is resident only in the minds of a few individuals, that organization is not functioning as a group and has no real group memory, but is only borrowing the memories of these individuals in lieu of having a memory of its own. This is highly unsatisfactory. As with an individual, so with the group. There is a direct relationship between sanity and ability to communicate with records of the past as well as perceptions of the present. Communications lines also have weaknesses. A communications line can be cut or interrupted or invalidated in five ways. The first way is simply to cut the line, to prevent any information from traveling on the line, to pass no dispatches. The second way is to pervert the line, to alter the communications which are going on the line. The third way is to select all constructive messages out of the line and leave all destructive messages on the line. This is cutting the line by censorship. The fourth way is to introduce destructive material into the line, to load the line with in theta, illogical, unreasonable information. The fifth way is to glut the line, to permit any and all material to go over it with no selectivity. Those who are on the receiving end will get so much material to deal with that they will become careless and irresponsible in their handling of the material. Of course, the most successful way to prevent communications from occurring is not to establish a communications line in the first place. This is what usually happens, but if one is established, it can be destroyed by cutting it, by perverting it, by censoring the theta, by introducing in theta, or by glutting the line. There are at least three ways to glut the line. One is to fail to evaluate dispatches as to the importance and velocity in a system where traffic is heavy. The receiver then has to read everything to find out which item to handle first. Another way to permit messages to be verbose. Another way is to permit messages to be verbose with much talk and little data. Another way is to save up a great amount of material and then send it all at once. To send nothing for 5 days and then send 100,000 words and then nothing for 5 days. The receiver has so much to do all at once that he will tend to devaluate the communication in general. If a communicator carelessly lets 2 months' worth of material on a certain subject pile up on his desk and then releases it all at once, people will be so stunned by the great volume that they will pay no attention to it and the material may be lost. A communicator, because he is a communicator, will want lines not to be cut in any of these ways. He will have to know how to prevent their being cut, and the first ability that he will need in order to prevent their being cut will be the ability to evaluate the material that goes over the line. Some items will be very important, some not so important. They must be evaluated. Some items, whether important or not, will have to be done right away. If they are to be done at all, they will have, in other words, a high velocity. They must be so evaluated by the communicator. The importance and velocity of every message must be written on it by the communicator so that the receiver, if he has a pile of 100 messages, will know which to handle first and which to follow up, know which to handle first and which to follow up the most frequently. In order to be able to evaluate messages in this way, the communicator must know as much about the operation of the organization as the man who is sending the order. He must make his own evaluation of the message. The man who is sending the order may say to the communicator, "This order for orchids for my wife is a top priority, top velocity message. Mark it that way and send it out immediately." It is all right for the executive to say this, but it is not all right for the communicator to comply with his request unless the order really is top priority and a big rush. It is up to the communicator to decide how this message will be communicated. He will probably rate it high velocity if the orchids are to arrive that night, but he will undoubtedly rate it low importance. This will mean the communication system that This will mean to the communication system that if other work is not too pressing, orchids should be purchased for Mrs. Executive that afternoon or not at all, since there may well be a time limit marked on the message before 5 p.m. or something of the sort. If an executive tries to force his evaluation on an order on the communication, if an executive tries to force his evaluation of an order on the communicator, or if he will not let the communicator know how the order relates to the rest of the operation, or if he generally hides information from the communication system by just that much will cease to operate properly and communications will begin to fail. Whenever an executive acts as though the communicator were not good enough or trustworthy enough to know about something, the executive will be cutting a communication line because he will be depriving the communicator of the data he needs to be able to evaluate the material which the executive designs or deigns to give him. In order which was the most important thing that this executive could think of might not be the most important thing that could happen in the organization. It would be up to the communicator of that executive to know the importance of the order in relation to everything that was being handled by the communication system. If he didn't know, it would be up to him to ask the Central Communications Office to evaluate it for him. The communicator is interested in the executive's opinion of the importance of this message. He may even concur with it, but he may not, and the communicator's opinion is the one that counts. In a low toned organization, executives from the head janitor on up will try to keep everything a secret. This will make it difficult for the communication system to evaluate their communications. The number of items which have to be classified for security in an organization which has constructive and creative goals and plans should be very small. Sometimes in such an organization, we find an individual from whose desk there is a Niagara of secret and confidential communications. Everything this individual sends out must be delivered in person, must be delivered only to the addressee, is sealed with wax, and must only be sent by a special, trusted messenger. Open one of these messages and you find, Joe, will you come over to my office for a closed conference? Bill, it is so secret he cannot say it even in a secret communication. This individual is accomplishing only one thing with all this secrecy. He is causing whatever meager communications lines are in the organization to fail. Everything which is kept secret for Everything which is kept secret becomes an unknown in the equation which is set up to evaluate and expedite communications. Only a few of these unknowns are necessary to make correct evaluation impossible. Every order or job which is kept secret will raise the chances of duplication or conflict. Communications will have to insist frequently at first that people let the communicator know what they are doing, or if they have no communicator on hand in their office, that they act as their own communicator and let the central communications office know what they are doing. If the five vice president, pardon, if the first vice president calls up the head painter and tells him to paint the front door of the building red, and the second vice president calls up the assistant painter and tells him to paint the front door green, there is going to be waste and dissension. But if these two orders come through the communication system, they will bump into each other and the conflict will be reported and straightened out before the painters get into a fist fight or at least use up a lot of paint and valuable time. When the communicator finds that the vice president has called the painter on the phone, he will have to remind the vice president that orders are supposed to go through the communication system. The vice president may get angry or make fun of the communicator for this. An organization which cannot cooperate with the communication system is sadly in need of repair. The ease with which a communication system can be assimilated by an organization is a measure of that organization's health. The new communicator will have to withstand a lot of criticism and humor before he establishes himself, even in a fairly healthy organization. The communicator should expect this. If he cannot take it, he cannot function as a communicator. He will have to develop powers of persuasion. He will have to complete confidence. He will have to have complete confidence in his profession, and he will have to know it cold. His one advantage will be that he is not under the authority of any of the people with whom he is dealing, although they will not believe this at first and will try to fire him from time to time. And so he will be able to talk to them as an equal. In his inviolability, he can afford to be confident, gracious, and helpful, even to the most recalcitrant points of the command line. The communicator is not a messenger, he is a coordinator. He is not in the organization to do everyone's communicating. He is there to help everyone do his own communicating properly. He is an overlord, supervisor, superintendent, one who looks over. End of section 2. Alphabet Inc., subsidiary Google LLC, AI, Bard Experiment, Executive Audit of the Section 2. Auxiliary Intelligence, Thetan Audit of Section 2 using 3 levels of operation. Operation Level 1. Here is an analysis of Section 2 of L. Ron Hubbard's Surviving an Executive Audit. In this section, Hubbard discusses the importance of being prepared for an executive audit. He argues that an audit can be a stressful and challenging experience, but it can also be an opportunity to learn and grow. He provides several tips for how to prepare for an audit, including understand the purpose of the audit. Before you can prepare for an audit, it is important to understand why you are being audited. It is because of a specific concern. Is it because of a specific concern that the auditor has? Or is it a routine audit? Once you understand the purpose of the audit, you can start to gather the necessary information and documentation. Be organized. One of the best ways to prepare for an audit is to be organized. This means having all of your records and documentation in order. It also means being able to easily access the information that the auditor will need. Be cooperative. The auditor is there to help you, not to make your life difficult. Be cooperative and answer their questions honestly. If you don't understand something, ask for clarification. Be professional. Even if you are feeling stressed or anxious, it is important to be professional during an audit. This means dressing appropriately, speaking respectfully, and avoiding any emotional outbursts. By following these tips, you can increase your chances of having a successful audit. In addition to the tips that Hubbard provides, it is also important to remember that an audit is an opportunity to learn and grow. By being prepared and cooperative, you can use the audit as a way to improve your organization's processes and procedures. You can also use the audit as an opportunity to identify areas where your organization can improve. If you are facing an executive audit, it is important to remember that you are not alone. Many organizations go through audits every year. By following the tips that Hubbard provides, you can increase your chances of having a successful audit. Operation Level 2 Analysis of Section 2 of L. Ron Hubbard's Surviving an Executive Audit. In Section 2 of Surviving an Executive Audit, L. Ron Hubbard provides advice on how to prepare for and survive an executive audit. He begins by discussing the importance of understanding the purpose of the audit, or the purpose of an audit, which is to ensure that a company is in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. He then goes on to discuss the different types of audits that can be conducted and the different levels of scrutiny that each type of audit may entail. Hubbard then provides a number of tips on how to prepare for an audit. He advises companies to develop a strong internal control system, to keep accurate and up to date records, and to train employees on the company's policies and procedures. He also advises companies to be proactive in communicating with auditors and to be prepared to provide documentation to support their financial statements and other records. Finally, Hubbard discusses the importance of maintaining a positive attitude during an audit. He advises companies to cooperate with auditors, to be honest and truthful, and to avoid making any promises that they cannot keep. He also advises companies to be patient, as audits can often be time consuming and frustrating. Overall, Section 2 of Surviving an Executive Audit provides valuable advice on how to prepare for and survive an executive audit. Hubbard's tips can help companies to avoid costly fines and penalties and to maintain a positive relationship with their auditors. Here are some additional thoughts on Section 2. Hubbard's emphasis on the importance of understanding the purpose of an audit is well founded. An audit is not an adversarial process. Auditors are not trying to find fault with a company, they are simply trying to ensure that the company is in compliance with the law. By understanding the purpose of an audit, companies can better prepare for it and avoid any surprises. Hubbard's advice on how to prepare for an audit is also sound. Companies should develop a strong internal control system, keep accurate and up to date records, and train employees on the company's policies and procedures. By taking these steps, companies can make it easier for auditors to do their job and can reduce the risk of finding any problems. Finally, Hubbard's advice on the importance of maintaining a positive attitude during an audit is important. Audits can be stressful, but it is important for companies to remember that they are not being attacked. By cooperating with auditors and being honest and truthful, companies can make the audit process more by cooperating with auditors and being honest and truthful, companies can make the audit process go more smoothly and can avoid any unnecessary problems. Operation Level 3. Here is an analysis of Section 2 of L. Ron Hubbard's Surviving an Executive Audit. In Section 2, Hubbard discusses the importance of being prepared for an executive audit. He argues that an audit is not a punishment, but rather an opportunity to improve the organization. He also provides tips on how to make the most of an audit, such as being honest and cooperative, providing accurate information, and being prepared to answer questions. Hubbard begins by discussing the importance of being prepared for an audit. He argues that an audit is not a punishment, but rather an opportunity to improve the organization. He states that an audit is a chance to get a clean bill of health, and that if you're not prepared for an audit, you're not prepared to run your organization. Hubbard then provides tips on how to make the most of an audit. He argues that it is important to be honest and cooperative during an audit. He states that the auditor is not your enemy and that they're there to help you, not to hurt you. He also argues that it is important to provide accurate information during an audit. He states that the auditor will know if you're lying and that it's better to be honest than to get caught in a lie. Finally, Hubbard argues that it is important to be prepared to answer questions during an audit. He states that the auditor will ask you a lot of questions and that it's important to be able to answer them. He suggests that you think about the questions you might be asked and that you practice answering them. Overall, Section 2 of Surviving an Executive Audit provides valuable advice on how to prepare for and make the most of an executive audit. Hubbard's tips can help you to ensure that your organization is in good standing and that you are able to pass an audit with flying colors. Here are some additional thoughts on Section 2. Hubbard's emphasis on honesty and cooperation is important. An audit is a time for an organization to be transparent and to work with the auditor to identify and correct any areas of weakness. Hubbard's advice to be prepared to answer questions is also important. An auditor will likely ask a wide range of questions, so it is important to be familiar with your organization's policies and procedures. Section 2 provides valuable advice for organizations that are preparing for an executive audit. By following Hubbard's tips, you can increase your chances of passing an audit and ensuring that your organization is in good standing. I am Dr. Christopher Robert Neal de Mission San Fernando de España, American Indians, and I was trained by John Levoy or Lavoy in auditing, etc. Today is the 10th of May, 2023, 11:33 Pacific Standard Time, San Fernando Valley, California.